I'm bored.
Yeah, me too.
Let's trade.
Yeah, let's.
And welcome back to what very well could be the longest news segment of the year. Just at our trade deadline. Adam, let's break down some of them trades.
Yeah, so the last one we talked about was the Dotson and Hopkins one.
Yeah.
So the next one I was involved in.
Let's go.
Me and Steve struck a deal. I got Amari DiMercato and a 2026 second for Zach Moss.
I mean, DiMercato might get a boosted workload to end the season.
He's out. He got hurt on the first snap of the game.
Well, he could have a role next year because running back class incoming is not very good. James Conner may be on his way out. Zach Moss, he had a good start to the year. Hasn't looked great since Taylor's come back and kind of taken back his job. And I mean, a second to go along with it. I'll take it.
Yeah, I like it both ways. Taylor getting hurt was huge because it gave me another chance to trade Zach Moss. And in my brain, I was like, yeah, man, I'd like a second or something for Zach Moss. And then Steve sent me that trade. And then I woke up to it and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. You read my mind. And I was about to send it out to most of the people, like, still in the playoffs in case you need a running back. And I guess Moss does. He's a little bit safer, or there's a little bit more upside than like a Zeke maybe if you were gonna try to go get him to compete, where it's like Zeke could do good, kind of as that bell cow now with Ramondre hurt, but again, it's like he probably won't have anything. Zach Moss has played good enough this year where maybe he gets a contract with another team next year to kind of have a role on it. If it's not with the Colts, maybe somewhere else to have a role, so I like that. And then I got the second, basically, that I wanted. DiMercato was just a little icing on the cake. But Moss, he was a bell cow in the games without Taylor, and Taylor's missing at least like 3 to 5 weeks. And when he was that bell cow from weeks 2 to 6-ish, he was a top 5 RB over that time. He didn't look great in this last week, but he did still get 94% of the snaps, 19 carries, and 2 catches. So if the efficiency just gets a little bit better and he's getting all that work, it seems like a pretty good ad for Steve in the playoffs.
Yeah, very well could work out nicely for both of you guys. And then you're also involved in the next trade, probably a little more consequential in the long run.
Yeah, this was probably the biggest trade of the...
You gotta tell me who owns these picks, because it just says that Zach apparently has 3 2025 firsts.
I traded away Dak Prescott, Ramondre Stevenson, and Trevor's 2025 first. I got back Joe Burrow, Matt's 2025 first, and Zach's 2026 second.
So, swapping QBs there, you get a little bit younger, still very good quarterback in Joe Burrow, just not going to be playing what most likely is the rest of the year.
Yeah.
At minimum, the fantasy season. Ramondre did just get hurt, but this trade happened prior to that. A decent young running back, and then, getting the draft picks. I do think that who's first you trade?
Trevor's.
I do think that Matt's first is going to be better than Trevor's first next year, but who knows? Stranger things have happened.
I know. I'm I'm afraid that I might have the Ryan case of trading Evans first for Steve's in a trade the year before and being like, Steve's worse than Evan, and then Steve ended up in the playoffs, and
I'm gonna stop you right there. But yeah, what was going through your head for this trade?
basically I looked at Zach's team and I said he only has Jared Goff as a quarterback. I looked at my team and said Dak's so good and I'm not going to make the playoffs right now. So it's like he's playing out of his mind. And Ramondre also has been playing pretty well, plus getting some depth for running back. And it's also just like a little scary with Ramondre on will Belichick be the coach? Like, who will be the running back there next year? I think it'll be Ramondre, but crazier things have happened. And then I went to look at other teams, and I was like, man, Zach could probably use an upgrade at quarterback, and getting like an RB2 flex guy would definitely help him out. He has a young QB that's hurt that, like, I think on a normal day, if you ask who do you like more, Burrow or Dak, for the next 3 years, most people would probably say Burrow, but Dak obviously better at this moment. And he did have a first that looked enticing in maths. So I sent him a trade. He said, wow, huh, that's interesting. Thought about it for a while, and then he's like, I don't know. I sent him like a counter kind of thing that is basically what this turned into, and he was like, that's really interesting. Talked about it a little bit more, and I was like, I didn't say all this to him, but like, this is kind of what I was thinking in my brain for both ways. Ramondre was a top 12 RB since week 6 after like a slow start, and over the past 4 weeks was RB7 in points per game prior to his injury. So it's like you're getting a top 12, top 8 RB to add to your lineup. Again, not doing anything for me. Not going to be in the playoffs. Plus, he's still young enough where he can hold value next year if Zach's going for it again next year. Makes sense. And then since Dak's bye week, he's averaging 5.5 points per game more than the second highest QB, which is CJ Stroud, and is an 11 point per game upgrade over Goff. So going into the playoffs being like, on average, I'm going to get 11 more points a game.
And
it's like
he's already,
a very good team. It's like that could be the difference between edging one out against a Trevor, against a Griff who has like that Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, like that elite tier of QB, could be the difference there from jumping from a middle of the pack one to one scoring 10 more points a game. So I think that is kind of what sold it for Zach. Like, wow, this could really help me win another championship this year. Didn't really want to give up Matt's first, and obviously he's a Bengals fan, so probably didn't want to give up Burrow, but it made sense both ways. And as long as Matt does worse than Trevor next year by a decent amount, I feel pretty happy that I got, younger at the QB and got the draft picks. So I do feel bad that immediately Ramondre got a hip drop tackled or whatever and sprained his ankle, but that seems to be the case happening a lot with that hip drop tackle thing that they might ban.
Yeah.
But also, how do you ban it? But I don't think it's the best thing when you see your guy running and someone just drop all of his body weight on the back of your player's heels. So I definitely feel bad for Zach, but obviously he still had a good team. So I think Ramondre was also like a nice insurance policy, but then you also lost the insurance immediately. So that was a little tough for him.
Yeah. Next trade involves me. I traded Matt's 2025 third round pick for wide receiver Alec Pierce. What are your thoughts on it, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, Pierce was a first round pick, which was something. Didn't quite pan out as well, but I mean, getting that for a 2025 third, sure. Like, he's still only 23 years old. If Richardson comes back next year and is slinging that thing and he's still in a role, like he's played 90% of snaps at least in most of the games. And in each of the past 2 weeks, he had 6 targets. So this means an expanded role or something. Could look like a pretty good trade for you. Also, don't blame Ethan for kind of just getting out on him while you could still get something.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that Ethan will cherish this 2025 pick that I gave him for all the way up until the draft next year. Let's move on to the next trade. Ethan traded Matt's 2025 third to Steve for Russell Wilson.
So he just traded Pierce for Russell Wilson. Obviously, Lawrence got hurt. So
this was like a live, like, oh shit, Lawrence is hurt.
How serious is it? He looked in a ton of pain.
And they made him walk.
Yeah. And apparently he's going to try to play like this week he wants to. I don't think he will, but getting a QB, I think, is obviously smart. Russ is QB 14 on the year, and that's going in to replace Trevor Lawrence, who was QB 13 on the year. So, like, I guess you're getting pretty much the same production, maybe a little more upside with, like, Lawrence, because he's had, I think, like a 30-point week this year, but, like, it's not a big downgrade, and I think it's pretty smart. And I also kind of get Steve getting out, but at this point, it's like, it's the tough debate of, like, does this trade make sense? Yeah, I'm getting a third for Russ, who's not going to play for me. But do I want to, like, make Ethan possibly better right before the playoffs, where I might have to face him in the playoffs? Like, yeah, not round 1, but maybe if Steve wins round 1, might have to go up against him in round 2. Like, do you want to make a team better? I don't know. I think that's the tough debate at this time of the year. Like, do the trade that makes sense for you, or but like helping out another team that you're competing with. I don't know.
But I'm sure Steve will cherish Matt's 2025 third round pick all the way up until the draft next year. Outside the meme trade James and I made of $2 FAAB, another trade between James and Steve. Steve received Brennan Cooks, and James gets Tyler Boyd, a 2026 fourth round, and Matt's 2025 third round pick.
Got traded 3 times in
like a half hour.
Yeah, this one also happened in overtime. So if the game didn't go to OT,
this doesn't happen.
This trade doesn't happen, which I think was literally like a buzzer beater. And yeah, again, Steve going for the playoffs. Cooks, he's been a top 15 wide receiver since their bye week. Obviously kind of going off the same time that Dak's been going off. And a top 10 receiver over the last 4 weeks. Boyd, in that time, is about wide receiver 32, scoring about 30 less points. So if this keeps up, you're getting a good wide receiver for this playoff run. Boyd, again, like a year younger, but a little less productive. You get a third and a fourth. Like, James not competing. Get a 30-year-old competitive guy off your team. Like, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Both ways. Probably not going to be super consequential either way, but I thought it made sense and was a pretty good trade.
Yeah, I don't hate this deal at all. But that is what wraps up our trade deadline. Not as big as it was last year, but I think you and I were discussing, we kind of said there are the bad teams like me and Matt who are young, so we're not going to be selling off a lot of stuff. There are teams like James, and where it's like, who do you want from this team?
Yeah, James doesn't have a ton of people that you could really buy and help your competitive team.
And the good teams, they kind of
already bought.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like, I think Trevor obviously, or Griffin obviously got a first. Ethan has his. Zach obviously made one of the moves. Like, the teams are good. Where are you actually getting the significant trade to upgrade at a position? Like, I know there was also, like, talks of a lot more. Like, I know you said you were sent out some offers to people. I know I had talks with a few others. I know, like, Griff, Trevor,
not out them right now.
What?
Who are you talking to?
bunch of people.
For who?
I know, like Griff, Trevor, we're talking about like possibly like adding someone. I know Cherry was for a long time trying to get rid of Ridley, just couldn't get a deal done. So it seemed like, yeah, it seemed kind of like a slow deadline this span. I think I made most of the moves.
You made 2 of the 4 we discussed.
Yeah, so I guess it was kind of exciting for me, but everybody else not as much. But it did seem like talks had and just couldn't quite find that right price to actually get a deal to successfully be done.
Yeah, and then we'll briefly go over injuries this week. Probably the biggest one, which does hurt Griff coming into the playoffs, is Tank Dell. Broke his leg because they said we're going to have him run block on 1st and goal from the 1.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And he got rolled up on.
Yeah, out for the year.
Out. Yep. Hayden Hurst, he got hurt 3 weeks ago, and he has amnesia, which is not great.
Yeah. I don't know. We talked about the Lawrence ankle sprain. We talked about the Ramondre ankle sprain. It'll be interesting if he gets back. Again, ankles are always weird. It's like usually like 2 to 5 weeks. If it's 5 weeks, he's basically out for the year. 2 could be back for like the 2nd round championship, but then again, it's right off an injury. How much do you trust him? Don't know. Brian Robinson seemed to have hurt his hamstring. But they're on a bye this week, and then Matt's not in the playoffs, and neither is Cherry, so like the Gibson doesn't really have that much of an effect. Christian Watson finally started looking like he was playing good again. Pulled a hamstring. Seemed like there was a decent bit of injuries this week. So there's probably a few I forgot that when we talk about power rankings right now, I'll see and be like, oh yeah, this guy actually died.
Yeah. Taysom Hill.
Here we go to power rankings. Here we are, week 14, power rankings. One of the last ones of the year. Number 12, I have James.
Bad.
James has been what we like to call not good.
Looking like me.
In his past 4 weeks, he has 3 possible wins. That's not good.
Not ideal, some would say.
His RB duo was still Miles Sanders and Damian Pierce. Last week, he started Dearness Johnson, and Dearness Johnson is now off of his team. That's
his nickname was Getting Cut.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got a... He doesn't have a good team. Pickens put up 12. Cool. Drake London didn't do much. He had some guys on bye. Jahan Dotson in his debut didn't do a ton. It's not a good team right now. I guess the bright spot was Parker Washington looked good on his taxi when Christian Kirk went down, had 6 catches for 61 yards and a touchdown, and basically like kind of his first action of the year. And yes, Cedric Tillman got some targets, so I guess that's the bright spot to look at. Number 11, I have myself. My team currently stinks.
I give you the PU treatment.
Yeah, I don't really have a QB. They're all hurt or benched.
Did you actually... Oh, yeah, because he got hurt in the first play.
Yeah, I started the 3 people that scored 0 points.
I think it's very funny. You scored 57 points, and Dak Prescott put up 28.
Yeah.
So, Dak Prescott scored about 49% of your points. And then you had one person crack 10, and that was the criminally hated QJ.
Yeah, he was my second best player.
Remember
And
when
at
you
the
used to,
time
like,
was my
you were-
first best player because Dak was no longer on the team.
Remember when you like kept making fun of me for being really bad this year?
Hey man,
Yeah.
Congrats Ryan. You won a few games.
I did.
Sure you're feeling great about those
Wasn't
wins.
supposed to.
Sure you're feeling really good about those wins.
What are you talking about, man? I got Brock Bowers in the bag.
But yeah, I did have Jordan Addison and DJ Moore and on the bench. So like two of my better players weren't playing. Have some injuries with like Dallas Goedert. Again, my team at this moment is horrible.
Bad.
Need to get healthy, need to draft well, need people to do better than what they do. But pretty bad team right now. 10. I've got Ryan.
Hello.
Hello.
Mr. Double Digits himself.
117 points last week. Pretty good. Hurts. Obviously good. We know that. He's won you a few weeks in a row. Sigh. Christian Watson playing super well.
Pull his hamstring.
The hamstring. Taysom Hill.
Doing things, man.
Sure. Mingo, I guess, is like a good bright spot of 6 catches for 69 yards. Nice.
I was starting Tanner Hudson, who played football.
Got you 7.5. Would have been like the second highest scorer on my team. So yeah, that's awesome, dude. You're trying to talk shit about him. It's like, I'll take. Yeah, but you might have done a little too well.
Yeah.
Scored a little too many points, and
I genuinely thought that like I was gonna be the one putting up 57 this week, where I'm like, okay,
yeah, starting Gainwell, DJ Chark,
Rondell Moore,
Hudson,
yeah.
Taysom Hill.
I'm like, okay, there's no way this team does good, and I'm like, oh, there's a touchdown. Oh, it's a lot of catches, man. Oh, let's stop, guys, stop.
Yeah. And then Brees Hall was obviously electric, 13 carries for 16 yards.
It's not his fault, man.
Yeah, he hasn't had above 4 yards per carry since week 5.
They just haven't had an O-line since week
2013.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number 9, have Matt. Matt looked good last week.
He did.
Charbonnet had a touchdown, 17 points. Gino, 30 bomb. Brian Robinson obviously got hurt. Garrett Wilson. But JSN, again, not like truly breaking out, but put up his second most points of the year in 13. Had a touchdown called back. That obviously would have been pretty nice. But Rashee Rice put up 14. He's put together a few good weeks in a row. A lot of targets. I think he's at like almost 20 targets in the past 2 weeks. Sam Laporta, 9 catches, 140, and a touchdown.
Can't beat that.
Not really. I remember Matt, when he traded up for him with my pick, didn't even really want to, and I had to like add stuff just to get the trade done. Regret that now. But he wanted Mayer, and then I ended up with Laporta, and good stuff ever since.
Man, how terrible.
Yeah, but then, yeah, A.T. Perry had a catch, and Algier didn't really do anything. Also had some guys on bye. It was a big bye week, so everybody was a little bit depleted. 8, I have Evan. Only put up 76. Herbert, fraud QB, put up 7 points. And 6-0 shootout. Yeah, it's hard to put up points when no touchdowns are scored in a game.
Imagine, like, on a side note, I always see these, like, the sports betting accounts, like Bleacher Report sports betting, where it's like, this guy just put $15,000 on no touchdown in the Chargers-Patriots game, He's about to win 3 minutes. Like, who has this kind of money, man?
Yeah, I don't
Who's
know.
doing this?
Noah Brown got 0 for him. But Devonta Smith, 9 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Really looking good. And then Jalen Waddle, like, low-key pretty disappointing year. Like, Tyreek's obviously going crazy. The running game's going crazy there. But wide receiver 27 on the year. I think Evan and a lot of people probably had higher hopes for him. Again, I don't think his career's screwed or anything and could definitely be really good, but has only kind of had 1 week over 20 and then had some ups and downs. Just kind of been more okay, where I think, at least I was expecting more from him this year. And yeah, just not that good. Evan has been struggling.
But at the end of the day, Adam, this is still an Anteaters account.
Yeah, number 7, have Cherry. Put up 120. Had a lot of guys do pretty solid, but Marquise Brown put up 0, which wasn't solid. But Nico, Tank Dell injured, 9 catches, 191 yards, and a touchdown. Ridiculous. Cortland Sutton, another game, another touchdown. Only had 2 catches, but one was, again, a huge touchdown. Rashad White found the end zone again. Bison did fine, but pretty solid overall week. Again, it's his future kind of going together. And even Jamison Williams had a touchdown where he was just so fast.
He was incredibly fast.
Got an end around, and it was like, oh, we're going to tackle him here. And then he was already like 10 yards past him. So that's, I guess, what they drafted him for, and we'll see if it turns into anything else. Number 6, I have Jasmus. Jasmus had one of those weeks. Achan back and healthy and played a full game. And while doing that, scored 2 touchdowns. Put up 25 points. Again, he's averaging 21.4 points a game. Obviously hasn't played a ton, but looked very good there. Eckler on his Breece Hall-ish. 14 carries for 18 yards. 2 very good running backs. Not having very good weeks. Cooper Kupp found the end zone, always nice. Evan Ingram finally found the end zone. And, I mean, Pacheco's been an absolute beast for him. 21 points this week after basically 26 last week. It's that interesting point of, yeah, like, Jasmus kind of sucks sometimes. He started Jacob Browning, who put up 26. But it's like, yeah, he kind of sucks sometimes. But it's also like, man, these guys hit on a week, and it's 146 points, which happened this week. So you can't really rule him out of it going forward.
Not yet.
5, Steve. Steve put up 136. James Conner, 2 touchdowns. Again, talked about Zach Moss a little. But Debo absolutely went crazy. 3 touchdowns. Huge week. Terry McLaurin said after the game that he ran cardio because he was not targeted or did not have a catch, was only targeted 3 times. And McBride, again, looking really good out of that tight end position. Again, did this without Saquon Barkley, who will surely be in the lineup going forward as long as he's healthy. So, yeah, thought it was a really good week for Steve heading into the playoffs. 4, have Ethan. Ethan put up like 149, but then did lose Lawrence. Talked about that already. ETN found the end zone. Hopkins found the end zone. Chase. Everybody was like, man, Chase isn't going to do anything with Jacob Browning at QB. 11 catches, 149 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah,
Olave looked good. Jameson Williams got back in there, so Olave could have a good week and managed to pull out a win and a very impressive week when it looked pretty grim for a little bit.
You mean Jameis Winston? You said Jameson Williams. I'm like, what? I had to sit there. I'm like,
Jameis
what does a Lions
Winston.
wide receiver have to do with a
Chris
Saints wide
Olave.
receiver?
Yeah, Winston. That's the one. 3, Zach put a 168. Yeah, McCaffrey. We know the story. Joe Mixon, 2 TDs. CD. We kind of know the story at this point. Evans playing really well still. Montgomery found the end zone. Again, adding Dak to this team, he would have had another 12 to put him at like 180. So
Definitely nothing to fuck with come playoff time.
yeah, could be very scary. 2, have Trevor. Trevor put up 195.86. Kyron dropped 20. Tyreek, I mean, what do you expect? It's Tyreek Hill. DK, 3 touchdowns on 6. Half of his catches were touchdowns. Just ridiculous. Puka still being Puka. He dropped 195 with Brevin Jordan and A.J. Dillon in the lineup.
Yeah. Trevor, very good. We've been saying it all year. Not all year. I think at one point we said, hey, are they in trouble? And then Trevor just went on his I don't know how to lose shit.
Yeah, that always seems to happen. I think if he puts Zeke in, he might. I don't know if he breaks 100, but he probably comes or breaks 200. But he comes really close. And 1, Griff. Griff didn't light the world on fire this week with only 123, but Tank Dell did end the game again with a broken leg and 0. Everybody just kind of did their thing. Kamara had 2 touchdowns, 28. Everybody else kind of sit around those like mid-teens. Did do this without, again, Josh Allen. And will be adding Jefferson back. So I guess if you look at the bright spot of, man, just lost Tank Dell, you do have Jefferson to fill that void, which I'd be pretty happy with as someone to fill that void. And Elijah Moore, for some reason, only catches passes from Joe Flacco. Would catch passes from him on the Jets, and now on the Browns, had one of his better weeks of the year with Joe Flacco. Doesn't make sense. Playoffs, all pretty much locked up. Griff has clinched the bye, the number 1 seed. Trevor clinched the playoffs, has essentially clinched the number 2 seed and the choice in the first round. Zach clinched the playoffs. He needs a win and a Trevor loss and to outscore Trevor by 105 points to get the 2nd seed. Possible, but unlikely, so it's going to be Trevor there. Steve clinched, finishes as the 2 seed in the Swallow division with a win or a Jasmus loss. Jasmus clinched the playoffs and could finish as the 2 seed in this division with a win and a loss as long as Steve doesn't score more than 40 more points than him.
How about me?
Look, everybody else is eliminated. Playoffs are set. If we're looking at draft pick tracker, Cherry essentially has pick 6. I think he'd have to lose and get outscored by like 100-something points. Evan, parentheses James, who owns the pick, has basically locked up pick 5. Again, would need to something crazy to happen to have done it. Me, with my own pick, I have pick 4. Again, it would have to be like I lose, you win, and outscore me by like 200 points.
Time to crack out the old 300-point week.
The 300-point week, I'll put up 50 again, and yeah. And now for the real deal, James, aka Cherry. If he loses and doesn't score 61 more points than Matt will have pick 1. Matt, if he loses and scores 61 less points than James, could get pick 1, or if he loses and James wins, can have pick 1. You need to lose, score 41 less points than James, and have James win to jump him. So lose, James also has to win and outscore you by 41, and then for you to jump Matt, you would need to lose, have Matt win, and you can't score 21 more points than Matt. So
huge Crusade and Bison guy this week.
And so points-wise, it's a little bit easier for you to jump Matt, but I think win-wise, it might be more likely that James pulls out a win, but pretty lackluster final week going into this. Playoffs are set. Draft position not fully set, but it kind of looks like we know what's going to happen. looks like it'll be James, Matt, you, but you never know. And we did have I this week put up the 9th worst week ever, and Trevor put up the 9th best week ever, and he would have beat me by like 140 something points.
Yeah.
But again, that's me putting up one of the worst weeks ever and him putting up one of the best.
I'm surprised with our lowest being 45 that 57 is 9th.
Yeah, I joined the elite of Ethan, you, Matt, Nate, Zach, and Ethan as the lowest point scorers ever. Woo!
Hey, 2 of those teams have championships.
3, me.
Well, I wasn't counting you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that
means mine's coming soon.
That would still be like an 140 point win. And then Trevor has the biggest blowout ever, 131. So any of these 100 point blowouts, they are very few and far between to happen. So that's why I basically said they're kind of set in stone. And that wraps up power rankings. Let's talk about these very important matchups.
Let's go do it. And we are back for the final regular season matchup previews. Adam, how big is your lead?
Well, first off, last week, Jasmus has won 7 straight against me, and again kept the streak of him always scoring more than 130 and me under 130. So in our last 7 matchups, no matter what happens, I don't win one. Jasmus owns me. Griff wins, stays undefeated, 6-0 for 7. And Ethan got win 30. I went 3-0. Got 11.6 points. I don't remember if I added these, but oh well. I'm 29 and 10, 116.9 points. Did I add those? I don't remember.
29 and 10 is 39.
And that's 13, yeah. Well, I don't know if I added the points from last week.
I don't think it fucking matters, dude.
I don't either. But you went 1 and 2. You were close to pulling out the Matt win, and
yeah.
You got 2.5 points to go to 88.9 and 21 and 18. I don't know if you're gonna win.
I'm gonna go on a limb here, brother. Unless you make the playoffs, the championship game times 100, probably not gonna win. But that leads me into my first pick. And when I see value, I take value. And that's why. I'm taking Matt over the Cranberries.
Ryan's back to taking what he wants to happen.
I am taking Matt. And you want to know why? Because Steve promised me Marvin. It's not happening. So we are taking Matt for 5.8 points. Also kind of a Hail Mary attempt to kind of keep it a little competitive. I don't think.
Steve is 2-0 versus Matt all time. And I think Steve wins. He's got some good matchups. He's got the better players. Sorry.
You good, brother. Who you taking?
I'm gonna take myself to beat James in one of the worst games ever.
The game's final score might be like 52-48.
Yeah, for 5.2 points, I am the underdog. I just
You definitely have a matchup.
I think it is a matchup, and I think it's one that I could win.
This is definitely one of the matchups in Sock League history.
It is one of the worst. Mahomes hasn't been great as of late. Has only broke 20 one time in the past 5 weeks. So if he has another bad week, I think I'm good. If he turns back into Mahomes and scores
But what
like
if
30.
James puts in Tommy DeVito instead?
then yes. We're 4-4 all time, tied up record wise. So this will be the CU gets to 5 wins.
There is nothing to brag about winning this game.
Hey man, if I win and you lose, I have a better all time record than you. That's something to brag about.
I guess, man. Speaking of me, I'm picking myself over Cherry. Brees Hall's against Houston. They are not great at defense. Gabe Davis versus Kansas City. I like that. Christian Watson against the Giants. I like that. Cole Kmet. Last time he played Detroit, he got 5 points. He's looking for a big bounce back at home. I was hoping that was the one where he got 23, and it was not. Looking for
Alec Pierce.
Alec Pierce making his debut. Dropped 19 last week. Plays Cincy, another not so great defense. You know, maybe Gardner hits him up. And Jonathan Mingo playing New Orleans. He's a guy.
Yeah, I don't really think you're gonna win,
I need points, man.
but I hope you do, and I hope you score 400 points.
Everyone on my team just drops 40.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Cherry is 4-2 versus you all time. My next pick.
Get him.
I'll just go with
Get him.
I'll go with Ethan over Jasmus.
I agree.
For 4 points. Ethan, Jasmus is 4-2 versus Ethan, but Ethan has won 2 of the last 3. Najee's been missing practice, and they play tomorrow on Thursday, and it's going to be like no points scored. So even if he does play, I'm not expecting much. Yeah, his whole team's questionable. I mean, obviously, like Eckler versus Denver. Denver's really bad against the run, so Eckler could bounce back, look good. But I think just the talent of Ethan's team is going to pull this out.
I would have to agree. I do think that Ethan's going to pull this one out. And you know who I think pulls this next one out, Adam?
I'm going to guess Evan.
Do I have to tell you what this is? This is an Anteaters stand account. He's taking this one from Zach, saying, not so fast there, buckaroo. Herbert versus Denver. He's a good bounce back. Gibbs versus Chicago could go off. Alexander Madison is one of the running backs in this league. Waddle versus Tennessee. The only one I'm not a big fan of is Smith versus Dallas, but he's also not going to be getting the number ones as they do have A.J. Brown. And Jerry Jeudy could go for a number of points greater than 10 versus the Chargers' bad defense. That's allowing like an average of like, I think it's like 385 yards a game. So, yeah. And then last time Jared Goff played at Chicago, he when was it? He got 13 points, including 3 interceptions. So maybe they have Goff's number. Surprised that Zach hasn't put Dak Prescott in, or he just likes the matchup with Goff better.
What about the last time McCaffrey played Seattle? He had 31 points.
Very hard to do that twice, man. Very hard to do that twice. I'm taking Evan for.
What about CD's last game versus Philly, where he had also almost like 30?
Very hard to do that twice, man.
Yeah, I think this could be close, but I do think Zach pulls this out. And this is going to be their 11th matchup.
It's wild.
11. That's tied for the most all time. Zach's won the last 3, but they are 5-5 all time. And you know who else has had some of the most matchups together? Griffin and Trevor, who's also having their 11th matchup all time.
Wow.
And I'm going to take Trevor for 4.7 points. I think Ryan is not the only one to beat Griff this year during the regular season. I think the streak comes to an end. Griff is 6-4 and has won 4 of the last 5, so has had Trevor's number as of late. But I don't know, man. It's just hard to go against like Tyreek, Zeke. He is starting Zeke this week with Jonathan Taylor out, but again with Ramondre hurt, stepping into a pretty big role. I think this will be a shootout. I think Trevor wins it. Also, this could very likely be a playoff matchup in
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks or a finals matchup or something. I think it's pretty likely. All of these matchups are kind of close, which is cool, but it's just a shame that none matter.
Yeah.
I feel like this was a good last week to be like, I feel like it was like, oh yeah, Griff and Trevor going for the bye. Like Jasmus and Ethan maybe fighting for the bye. Me and James fighting for a playoff spot.
Evan and Zach fighting for a playoff
Yeah,
spot.
Evan and Zach fighting for a playoff spot. Steve and Matt fighting for pick one.
So, Evan versus Ryan fighting for pick one.
You versus Cherry.
Well, no, because
yeah.
You said Steve and Matt.
Yeah, but like, whatever. I thought this was going to be some good matchups. Instead, basically everything's decided. I'm
Does
sure
not matter.
most of the playoff teams are going into this and being like, please don't get hurt, please don't get hurt, please don't get hurt. You just want your guys to come out healthy on the other side. Don't want any injuries going into the playoffs. Obviously, Griff and Ethan have that little bit of an advantage where if someone does get banged up, they at least have the playoff bye next week. But that wraps it up for this episode. Next week, obviously, going to be talking basically all playoffs and how that draft order, those first 6 picks kind of wind up. Good luck. Hopefully you get super lucky. If not, still a top 3 pick.
We'll see you next week.